Feels like it's been a long time since we did a podcast, Roob.
It has been a long time. I think you've been traveling the world. I've been traveling central Pennsylvania. So, yeah, going through a little withdrawal.
Yeah, let's see if we remember how to do this. This is the Eagle Eye Podcast. We're presented by Nissan. He's Reuben Frank, and I'm Dave Zangaro. So far, so good. We're getting through this one. We had a fun end of the week. You were exploring central Pennsylvania a little bit. I was in Florida. I stayed down in Florida for a little bit after the owners' meetings. How was your little trip?
It was great. Yeah, nice little getaway. Feel recharged and refreshed. Met some central Pennsylvania Eagles fans. And you run into any Eagles fans down in the Dry Tortugas?
This is funny. I actually did. So after the owners' meetings, we were in West Palm Beach area, and I drove down. I did the drive through the Keys, which I'd never done before, and it was really fun. I made some fun stops along the way, and then the whole impetus for the trip was I was taking the Yankee Freedom to Dry Tortugas National Park, which is beautiful. I'd highly recommend it, but I'm on the I want to know what you would have done in this situation. So I'm on the bow of the boat. I love being out on deck at boats. It's my favorite thing. And I see a guy with an Eagles hat, and we weren't talking. I just saw him. But then he's not far from me, and I overhear him tell, I think his son or his son-in-law, "Hey, that guy looks like Dave Zangaro from NBC Sports." What do I do in that situation? Because he doesn't know I'm hearing him. I feel like I should be like, "Hey, how's it going?" But I don't. I just and we never spoke about it.
Oh, you never did?
Never did.
What would I do in that situation? The first thing I'm doing is looking for a lifeboat. I might have gone over and said hi, depending on how much time was left in the ride. I probably, I don't know.
But it feels so presumptuous to be like, "I'm sure you wanted to meet me and talk about football right now."
I couldn't help but hearing that.
Yeah,
that's a tricky one. People don't realize how loud they can be when they're talking to people. Hey, that's
we were on a boat, so it was like it was loud, and it yeah.
Now, how long was the ferry ride?
It's about 2 hours. So it's a long day. I stayed in Key West. I woke up when it was dark out, and I walked because there's not really great parking in Key West, and I had parking at my hotel. So I walked about a half hour in the dark through Key West, which is fun because all the roosters are crowing. And then it's about a 2 hour ferry ride to Dry Tortugas. You get there around 10ish. You leave at like 2:45. So you're there for a long time. And then it's a 2 hour ferry back.
Interesting. Yeah, sounds like a great trip. The photos I saw were pretty impressive.
Oh, I did upload. Real quick, I can show a couple. It was just a really cool spot. Kind of unique national park. Old Fort Jefferson there.
How big is the island?
Not very big. And the fort takes up most of it.
So what is there in the where? Do they have sheets out there? They have Wawa? Is there like Cumberland Farms? What do they got for like if you need a hoagie in the middle of the day?
The boat actually provides a lunch, which is very nice.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So you don't have to plan ahead.
Interesting. Okay. So no sheets on the island.
No.
Gotcha. Oh, sounds like a great trip.
Yeah, it was good. My 41st national park.
I think maybe on a pod when we don't have anything to talk about, you should rank them from 1 to 41.
Maybe, yeah. We'll at least do a top 10 or something.
All right.
Much later, when we're in a real dead season. We're not in the dead season yet. We have a lot to talk about.
We do.
Today.
We should start now.
We have a bunch of questions later on we'll get to from you guys. We want to go through most likely positions for the Eagles in the first round of the draft. I have a countdown running this week on NBC Sports Philadelphia. So we want to go through those and kind of stop off at each position and talk about the likelihood and some players who might make sense there. But I want to start with a free agent who's actually still available. Justin Simmons was on Up and Adams with Kay Adams, and she asked him about the Eagles and whether or not, the possibility to play for Vic Fangio and Christian Parker again would tilt the scale for him. And he said it would. And this is not the first time he's spoken about the Eagles, but it seems like he would be really interested in playing here.
Do you remember when Kay Adams worked for us?
I actually don't remember that.
Yeah, she worked for us for a while. She's really good. I remember
Well, I
being
know she worked up in New England with like Tommy and those guys.
yeah, but she did she used to do DNL or whatever it was called. She used to be on with us occasionally. She was really good. You could kind of tell she was going to go places. But in any case, yeah, it was kind of interesting to hear him talking so openly about wanting to come here. Look, it's the middle of April. He doesn't have a job. I'm sure he's not in a hurry. I think he's still a good player. Didn't really work out great in Atlanta. He had the 1 year there after spending his whole career with the Broncos, where he played with played under Vic and under Christian Parker, who he also mentioned, and I think Kay brought him up, secondary coach. So there's a lot of connections. I think he's still a good player. The Eagles could use a safety, and I think it makes sense in a lot of ways. He's, what is he, 31, 32, somewhere in there?
31.
31. So he'll be 32 somewhere in the next 364 days. I really, it's really cool to hear. You don't really hear guys kind of campaigning to be in a certain place. But I think it makes sense for the Eagles. I think it makes sense for him. And, when a guy gets to that age, you wonder about the career arc. And obviously his best days are behind him. But he was a Pro Bowler just 2 years ago, his last year with the Broncos. So, 32, 33 career interceptions, always been a playmaker, really solid, steady, consistent career. I like hearing him talk about wanting to be here. Vic would like him here. And if they can make the money work, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And look, I don't want to make it seem like he was openly campaigning to play in Philly. He was asked a question about Vic Fangio and Christian Parker specifically. So I think we have to frame it like that. But here's what he said. He was asked if it tilts the scale, and he said it really does. As honest as I can be, a lot of it too, going back to your question earlier about Atlanta, there was a lot of new, right? There was a new system. There was a new way to do it. Going to Philly with Vic, you know exactly what you're getting out of me, and I know exactly what I'm getting out of them because I've been in the system. I still have a ways to go in mastering it, but there's some things and nuances that I know Vic likes, that I know Christian Parker likes. I think I could really help in that area. Obviously, then moving on from CJ and what he's poured into that city, there's big shoes to fill, but I love what they have going on with Blankenship and the rest of the supporting cast there, so I don't know. It's interesting. I'm excited to see what happens. The fact that he goes into the situation in Philadelphia makes you know that he's at least monitoring it.
Yeah, it might not be campaigning, but it's awfully close. It's really right on the edge. Yeah, I mean, his face just lit up when he was asked about Vic and about Philly. So, yeah, I mean, once he starts talking about details like Blankenship and CJ and filling those shoes, somebody's got to fill them. And maybe they're gonna try to make it work with Sidney Brown, and maybe it will work. I don't know, but if you're talking about a guy who's been a solid NFL player for almost a decade versus Sidney, who's, we just haven't seen that much of, and nothing against Sidney, but I just think it makes perfect sense, and we'll see what happens. I don't think anything would be imminent till after the draft. I don't think anything is imminent, and I don't think anything would happen until after the draft is what I'm trying to say. But he's still out there, and they still need a safety. And at some point, I wouldn't be surprised if it happens.
Yeah, I think after the draft definitely makes sense, not just from team perspectives, but also from his perspective. He doesn't want to go to a team that then ends up drafting a safety in the first round, right? And that is on the table for the Eagles. We'll get to the positions that are most likely in the first round, and safety is not at the bottom of the list. I mean, it's a position where they could add. So from both sides, I think it does make sense to wait until after the draft. And also, the Eagles are playing the compensatory pick game. They don't want to lose a compensatory pick in 2026, and anyone who signs after the draft no longer counts toward that formula. So, and they might lose one for Ojulari. He's the one guy they signed who might cancel one of those out. So they might have 11 or 12 picks next year, depending on how that goes. They don't want to lose another one for no reason. So I think they're going to see what happens in the draft, kind of like what happened last year. They thought they were going to draft a tackle in an early round, and the board didn't fall that way. So they end up signing Mekhi Becton, like a day or two after the draft ended.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's been conversations, and Howie and Simmons' agent, it's obvious what the situation is, and I'm sure they've talked, and there's no reason to rush it. I mean, if he wants to be here and they want him here, and they can have an agreement. I mean, there's no tampering. He's a free agent, and then just agree to do it after the draft so they don't lose a compensatory pick. So I don't know if that's the case, but that's how these things can work. And it's not like he's sifting through 5 offers. I mean, he might have other offers, but if he wants to be here and they want him here, they can make it work after the draft, certainly. So it's an intriguing name. It's a good name. He's a fun player. He's been a really good player for a long time. Boston College, I believe, originally. So, it'll be a good one to follow as we move forward here. And you're right. And I think when you're picking 32, like all those rules about they've never taken a safety in the first round, they haven't taken a linebacker since 79. When you're picking at 32, I think those rules kind of go out the window, because they've taken a safety. What was Nate Allen, like 35? I mean, there's not a huge difference between 32 and 35 other than what round it is. We'll see what happens there, but it's a fun one to think about. I'd love to see it happen, and I think there's a fair chance it will.
Yeah, last year he signed a 1-year deal. Waited until August to sign with the Falcons. If he did decide to join Philly, he could probably wait that long again. He at least knows his defense. I think he's probably felt that crunch a little bit more in Atlanta last year, trying to pick up a new defense. $7.5 million last year, which I don't know if the Eagles would be willing to pay that, but he also might not cost that. He's a year removed from his prime. He was still good last year, started 16 games. I think he could still be an effective player. He's been pretty durable in his career too.
He has, just really consistent, steady player. I think $5 million gets it done.
Yeah, and that'd be intriguing because, the Eagles did not have to move on from C.J. Gardner-Johnson. I think we all understand their reasons, or at least have heard their reasons for it. But we also know that if Vic Fangio was like, hey, I can't lose C.J. Gardner-Johnson, he's not gone, right? Like, you don't get rid of a player who is like integral to your defense. And by nature of them trading him, they told you they didn't think he was integral to their defense. So a guy like Simmons, who Vic knows exactly what he expects from him, it would make a lot of sense. The other part of this is like they haven't signed any of Vic's guys, which is like, we've talked about this before. When they hired Vic and I was doing like free agent targets, there were so many players I listed on there who had ties to Vic Fangio, because that's kind of what happens, right? And you think back to Jim Schwartz, a veteran DC. They brought in so many of Jim Schwartz's guys, and you just thought, well, Vic's going to want his guys, and that hasn't been the case. He just wants guys he can work with.
Yeah, and this is pure speculation now, but I just wonder, and we'll find this out as the offseason moves forward, but I would not be shocked if we learn at some point that when they traded CJ, they were already kind of targeting Justin Simmons. If that was, they know he's out there. I mean, he's been out there since March. I mean, he had free agency in March, and they might have had that in their back pocket. And we'll see. And I'm just kind of guessing, but knowing Howie, I mean, there's always a plan. I mean, he's always got something figured out. So I don't know if you just cut ties with CJ, knowing that all you have is Sidney Brown, possibly. But I just wonder if there was kind of a long-term plan there.
Maybe risky, because you don't know if that plan is going to work out, if that was the case. And that all speculation, right? Like, I think they know their options. Like, I don't think they're blind to the fact that a good player who has performed well in this defense is available. I think they know that. I don't know if it went that far to like have some plan in place, but they know he's available.
Yeah, it's like, I'm not going to break up with her, but if I break up with her, I know I can go out with her. So, maybe I'll just, it's a little risky, but Howie's always got a plan. Now we'll learn more about it as the offseason goes through. But and, I mean, what do you think of Sidney Brown? Like, we saw him play a lot more 2 years ago on defense, some good, some bad. He's older now. Obviously, there was the injury that set him back. Never really got that playing time back coming off the injury. Is he a guy that you could see being a starter?
Yeah, it's tough. It seems like a lot of fans are off the Sidney Brown bandwagon. We haven't seen enough of him. And, you look back at 2 years ago, it's hard to really evaluate anyone in that defense. It became such a train wreck by the end of the year. And half of his snaps weren't even a safety. He was playing nickel.
Yeah.
Which, I do think in general, and we're speaking like real generalities here, I think he's probably better closer to the line of scrimmage, which might not quite fit what they're going to need him to do if he's a starting safety in this defense. So I think maybe even if he's not a starter, I could see them figuring out a way to play him on defense in certain situations, whether it's big nickel or just like an extra body on the field and dime package, whatever it is. Like, I could see him having a role if he's not the starter. As far as him being a day one guy next to Reed Blankenship, we just don't know. I think a lot of people point at last year and say, well, he was behind Tristan McCollum. He was behind Avonte Maddox. Well, he also missed the first 5 games of the season on the PUP list. He didn't have a training camp, didn't have an offseason with Fangio. It took Cooper DeJean until week 6 to see the field because he missed a few weeks in camp. I don't know how much stock I put into that with Sidney having missed all offseason and the first 5 games of the season. I think it makes sense that he was really far behind.
Yeah, and I think Vic even said that when he was asked why other guys were ahead of him. And he said he's just been behind because of the injury. And so maybe he would have been behind them anyway. I just can't see that. I can't see him being behind Tristan McCollum or Avonte later. But I don't know enough. I thought he did do some good things as a rookie. We know he's a big hitter. He also takes too many risks. And, there's a lot of times we saw him just kind of try to blow a guy up and just whiff on the tackle. And that's obviously something he's got to clean up. But I think there's something there.
The last time we really saw him play defense, he had a 99-yard interception return touchdown.
He sure did. Yeah. So we'll see. I'd like to see what it looks like, what he looks like out there, a training camp, and healthy Sidney Brown we haven't seen in training camp in a couple of years. So I think there's something to like about him, but yeah, it's really impossible to project right now.
Yeah, in any case, I don't see them just handing him this job. I think there will be competition by way of draft pick or free agent. I just have a hard time imagining they're just going to say, here's your job, Sidney. We're going to go with you and Reed.
Yeah, no question about it. I don't know who it's going to be, but that's not their nature. It's not Vic's nature. It's not Howie's nature to just give an unproven guy the job. Yeah, just don't see it.
I'm excited to watch him. He's a fun player to watch. There's no doubt about it. It was funny. I was on Bird's Huddle. Gosh, I think it was after the CJ trade, and I was asked which of all these young guys who might have big roles are you excited to see play? I answered Sidney, and I was like, I want to make it clear. I'm not saying I think he's the one who might have the most success, but if you're asking me who I'm excited to watch play, yeah, he has a fun play style.
Yeah, he does. I'd probably answer Keeley. I'm really curious about Keeley. So, but
I might be more bullish on Keeley.
Yeah,
but
I think Keeley's a fun player, though. Also, yeah, okay. I think they're kind of in similar situations. Obviously, Keeley didn't have the injury, but they both have a lot to prove, and they're both going to get some opportunity to some extent.
Yeah. All right, let's move on, and we'll go through the positions most likely to get drafted in the first round. But we'll start with the least likely. And we don't have to spend time on all of these, but specialists at 12, they're not going to draft a specialist. We don't need to spend more time on that. 11, quarterback.
I haven't taken a quarterback in the first round since 2016. Been 9 years.
Yeah, they're not going to take a quarterback in the first round. I could see them a day 3 pick on a quarterback.
Yeah, well, they're a quarterback factory. So, yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked.
A guy to compete with DTR and put in the pipeline because, hey, in a year or two, maybe someone's ready to give Tanner McKee a shot to start, or at least a shot to compete for a starting gig.
Yeah, and I mean, they're going to have 4 in camp, so I can't imagine the 4th will be Ian Book. So we'll see. He might be coaching by then. That's my prediction.
With the Eagles?
Somewhere.
Oh, okay. That'd be a heck of a prediction if you get him coaching with the Eagles and he does. Go out on a limb. No one's going to remember if you get it wrong.
Okay. Let it be written.
Okay. Number 10, running back. They have Saquon Barkley. They just paid him. They signed A.J. Dillon, which isn't a sure thing. He has that neck injury, or he's coming off that neck injury. But they drafted Will Shipley last year, too, a 4th-round pick that you'd expect will have a chance to get some snaps this year. Pretty unlikely they draft a running back in the 1st round.
Who's the last one they drafted?
In the 1st round? I don't know.
Be that Keith Byers, 1986, out of Ohio State.
Byers, yeah, that makes sense.
That was Buddy Ryan's first draft pick, and he I think he had like a couple broken metatarsals or something in his foot. You have metatarsals in your feet, and
you should. Yeah,
I think most people do. And but yeah, I think Buddy called him a medical reject and then drafted him. Maybe kind of playing that game. Byers was not a great runner, but ended up being a tremendous receiver, one of the best. Had over 800 catches in his career. Became a Pro Bowl receiving back. But yeah, he was the last one.
They've drafted some in the 2nd round.
Saran Stacy.
I was thinking more about Shady and Miles Sanders.
Yeah,
but
there's that.
They have drafted some. I could see them using. I think the earliest they would draft a running back is day 2.
Yeah.
They brought in Jaden Blue for a 30 visit, someone with like a lot of speed, an intriguing guy. But as far as a 1st round pick, that's not happening.
Yeah. I could see in the later rounds Donnell Pumphrey type. Why is Barrett always picking on Donnell Pumphrey? We were talking about like 1st round busts, and he always rips on Donnell Pumphrey. Like he was a 4th round pick, Barrett. And I was like, Barrett, come on now. We're talking about like Bernard Williams and Anton Davis and all those guys, and he's like, and don't forget Donnell Pumphrey. Anyway,
he was a 4th round pick. Nice kid. I like Donnell.
He was a good kid. Never got to play.
Yeah, that was a bad pick. And that's also the reason Howie will never talk about the strength of a draft anymore, because before that draft, you talk about like how strong that running back crop was and how many opportunities there would be to get a good one. And then he took Pumphrey in the 4th round.
Yeah, I don't blame him after that.
So far, you're in agreement with this list?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I have linebacker at 9. Now, you could have sold me on a linebacker had they not re-signed Zach Bond, but they've already bucked the trend at linebacker. They paid one. They're not doubling down on that.
I think that's a safe bet. Yeah.
It's like if they hadn't signed Bond and Jod Campbell was there at 32, sure, I get that. But with Bond under contract for 3 more years, it's not like linebacker isn't a need. I mean, they could draft one at some point because you don't know about Nakobe Dean's health and you don't know what Jeremiah Trotter Jr. is, but they have Zach Bond. I think they feel pretty good about that.
Yeah, and by the way, speaking of Barrett, his breakdowns are so good on Huddle. He did Jahad Campbell on Friday. Really impressive player, but yeah, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, fun player. A player who would it'd be unfair to expect him to be a 1-for-1 swap with Zach Bond, but does a lot of the same things. It has like a similar skill set.
Yeah.
So if Bond wasn't here, you could talk me into that. But since he is, you can't.
Right. He's good at he does everything well. He's one of those guys who's, he can cover. He's stout at the line of scrimmage. He's got some pass rush ability. So he's a fun player. I'm curious to see where he does end up going and what kind of career he has, but it's not going to be here.
Yeah, and sometimes linebacker evaluations are really tough.
I wonder when we're going to get some word on Nakobe, his health, and maybe some kind of timetable, because we have no idea, what we're looking at with him. It's kind of a big question, especially with Oren Burks gone. It's kind of a interesting situation, but that's off topic. But we were talking about linebackers, so it is kind of germane to the conversation.
Yeah, a long way to go there. I know Nakobe's probably going to tell you he's ready whenever, but that's not the way this always works.
No.
At 8, I have wide receiver.
It's fair. I do think they'll take one.
Sure, with one of their 8 picks, I think in a late round, it makes sense to throw a dart at a receiver.
Where did I have? I think 4th round. I had 5th round. I had him taking Nick Nash from San Jose State.
Okay.
But yeah, I could see 4th, but 5th is probably more likely since they have 17 picks in the 5th round.
Yeah, probably true. They drafted one in the 5th and one in the 6th last year. I could see something similar, a day 3 pick on a receiver. I just don't know if it's the best allocation of resources to draft one on day 1. And it's kind of been like a hot pick for some of the national mock drafters for the Eagles, because I understand it. You have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, and you're thinking, well, maybe they can find an upgrade over Jahan Dotson. But the problem is they just don't throw to that third guy as much. Now, maybe if Dallas Goedert really isn't here and they don't have that security blanket, maybe the third receiver becomes more important, but I still don't know if it's the wisest allocation of resources to draft a first-round receiver.
I guess the argument there is that if they had an elite third receiver, then Jalen would throw to him. But I don't buy it. I think
it's a risk to find out, all right?
Yeah, it is. And I think Jahan Dotson showed some things very late in the season that maybe gives you a little confidence that I loved his attitude through the whole year. He never got down. He never complained. He never whined. He kept working hard. And then, he had a couple big catches in the Super Bowl. So he was the MVP through the first play or two. So maybe their evaluation of him has changed where like maybe he can be a legit 3. He was the 3 by default last year, but you just need a guy who can catch a couple balls each game and get you 2 for 22, 2 for 25, and make those plays when he has an opportunity and not complain. And maybe he's that guy.
Mm-hmm.
And under contract.
And look, Howie's track record drafting receivers just hasn't been very good.
That's fair. Devontae turned out pretty well.
I could have made that pick.
Yeah, I hear you.
It's like the one good receiver pick he's had. You can argue Jordan Matthews was a fine pick, but there's a lot of misses. Nelson wasn't his pick, but his other first rounder was Rager. Second round, JJ Arcega-Whiteside. Like, it hasn't been good.
Yeah, Rager is, he's still coming on though. I think he's got a shot. J-Jaw is out of the league. I think, did he retire?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, that one didn't go well. He caught like 9 passes in his career. Remember when he dropped that touchdown? Like, I guess he was on like the 1-yard line. He just dropped it. He's got to live with that his whole life. That sucks.
Yeah, he's a nice kid.
Yeah, good guy.
At 7, I have cornerback. Howie drafted his first round cornerback last year, and then he doubled down. He takes Cooper DeJean at 40. It's possible they draft a corner in the first round. I don't think it's likely.
The only thing, and I agree with where you put it, but they lost 3 corners. They lost 3 corners. So, Slay, Rogers, Maddox. So I guess it's possible. He might say, look, I'm on a roll drafting corners. But yeah, I'd be surprised. Yeah.
You know what's funny? It kind of went under the radar a little bit, but Howie was asked about each of his signings in the offseason. He was way more complimentary about Adoree Jackson than I expected.
He talked about him for a while.
He talked about him for a while and said he thinks his best football is ahead of him, which, look, I don't believe that, but they might think more of Adoree Jackson than public does.
Yeah, he also said who was the linebacker who played way better than anyone gave him credit for that?
Zach Cunningham.
Zach Cunningham. He never played again. So I take what Howie says with a grain of salt, but he was effusive about him.
Yeah, I think the Cunningham one was trying to act like he didn't screw up that position.
Probably, yeah.
Well, maybe the Adoree Jackson one is too. At 6, I have tight end, and it's probably unlikely, not because the need isn't there, but because I don't know if the value is going to line up late in the first round. There's clearly 2 first-round tight ends who are probably going to be long gone by the time the Eagles pick, but I left it this high just in case one of those guys slips.
Yeah, it would take quite a trade up and quite a huge slippage, but
Sometimes you say that, though, and you just never know.
you never know.
No one in the world thought Quinyon Mitchell would be there at 22 last year.
That's true. Yeah, no, but I'm saying if it happens, Howie would probably pounce, but yeah, I don't think it's super likely.
Yeah, and that's why it's at 6. I think a day 2 tight end, like if we were going likelihood of a day 2 pick at these positions, I would have tight end much higher.
Yeah, and I haven't taken a tight end in my All Eagles mock, Gunnar Helm from Texas, in the 3rd round. So I think that's a likely spot. Middle rounds.
I like a Gunnar Helm, by the way.
Yeah.
I had him in my mock draft too. He's the only player we doubled up on.
Did you really?
Mm-hmm.
Where'd you have him going?
I had him as the 4th round pick. Once you get in the 3rd, 4th round, it's so funny. People act like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. You had him in the 4th round. It's like, no one knows. Like, Nakobe Dean went in the 3rd round.
Especially
Ringo went in the 4th round.
Yeah.
You try to be like as realistic as possible, but also like what even classifies as realistic. Like,
yeah,
we're all just going off of what other people are saying who don't know any better.
I heard he was a 3rd rounder. I don't know what you're talking about. Maybe we should have a little side bet, see who's closer.
Daniel Jeremiah had a funny tweet the other day. He said, good news. I've talked to enough agents to know there will be 67 first-round picks this year.
That's good.
It's good. And it's true. It's like, without fail, your team's going to draft somebody in the 2nd round who you're going to say, oh, he was projected to be a first rounder, because by the end of the pre-draft process, yeah, like the first 65 guys taken are projected to be first round.
You can find somebody who had them in the 1st round.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a break. On the other side, we'll get to the top 5 most likely, and we'll answer a bunch of questions from all you guys.
You deserve a car that thrills you, a car that puts goosebumps on your goosebumps. At Nissan, we've got everything from turbocharged SUVs to 100% electric vehicles that'll make your heart beat faster. Experience the thrill for yourself and shop your local Nissan store and nissanusa.com today.
All right, we're back on the Eagle Eye podcast presented by Nissan, Reuben Frank, and Dave Zangaro. We are in the middle of our countdown of the most likely positions for the Eagles to draft in the 1st round. They obviously have pick number 32. They are not definitely going to stay there at 32. There's a chance they move up. There's a chance they don't even draft in the 1st round. But at number 5, I have interior offensive line, namely guard. I don't think they're going to draft a center. So we're talking about a guard here. It's a position that it's like a little weird because you end up with these offensive line prospects who are they guards? Are they tackles? How do teams view them? It differs. But Howie's only ever drafted one pure guard in the 1st round, and it didn't go well.
No, it did not go well. Unless your house is on fire, and it went well. Before that, was it Sean Andrews? Probably in 2004, 2-time All-Pro, but obviously didn't end well. Yeah, it's hard to imagine that's going to happen, but I do think it deserves to be as high as it is, just because with this team and trenches, there's a chance.
Yeah, and I think there are players who line up here, whether it's Tyler Booker or Donovan Jackson, Gray Zabel. Like, there are players who are going to be available or might be available at 32 might be the best player on the board at 32. And it's like a plug and play option, right? Like if they draft a guard in the first round, I would think automatically that guy becomes the favorite to win that right guard job.
Oh, no question about it. And I like that Gray Zabel, by the way.
NDSU.
Yeah.
Some of these guys are weird because like I think he's played 4 or 5 positions in college. So most people, it seems like, are considering him a guard, but you never know. Like one team could see him as a tackle, like end up playing tackle. Like Donovan Jackson ended up having to play some tackle out of necessity, but I don't know. Maybe a team likes him there.
I just want Howie to come out and say, we're looking for the best available North Dakota State guy.
Unlikely. Who was the cornerback from North Dakota State the Eagles brought in?
I always forget his name. I know you know his name.
C.J. Smith.
C.J. Smith.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. Now we're really in the thick of it here at 4. I know you hate guessing, but do you know where I'm going with this?
No, but I'm about to find out.
Safety. They've never drafted a safety in the first round. But you mentioned it earlier. When you're drafting at 32, you're not in the top 15. You're not in the thick of the premium first round picks.
I think all the rules go out the window.
I think so. And again, like Nicky Manwari, if he's there, makes a lot of sense. Malachi Starks, if he's there, like there are a couple of premier players who could very well be there, and it would make sense.
Yeah, I don't think it's I don't think it's an impossibility. And this might be the highest. I mean, everything kind of lines up. I mean, you'd have to be pretty far down in the first round, and there'd have to be guys that line up at that spot. And you have to have some sort of need there. I know how he's not going to draft for need, but if he still had CJ, he's not drafting a safety at 32. But I don't think it's an impossibility.
Every GM says they don't draft for need, but like then again, they kind of do. It like at least informs part of the decision.
It has to. And I mean, it could be best available player at one of 4 positions, which probably is the case here, maybe 5, but best available. If the best available player at 32 is a quarterback, Howie's not drafting that guy. So
yeah, he's probably trading, picking up more picks.
Yeah.
What do you think about Eamon Wari? He is like freak. Like what a freak. Just a super athletic freak.
He's a fun player. And yeah, he's fun to watch, and I would love to see it. I don't think it's going to happen, but yeah,
I think it's possible. I wouldn't say it's not going to happen. Like it would not shock me if they walked away with a safety.
I'd be surprised.
So if you'd be surprised about that, you basically think it's going to be one of these top 3 positions.
Pretty much.
Okay. So I have the order of my list in front of me. I'm curious about your order. So we're talking, I don't want to give away my order here, but the 3 positions, 2 on the defensive line, 1 on the offensive line. How would you rank them 3 to 1? And then I'll tell you my ranking.
I would say offensive tackle, edge, interior defensive line.
Exactly the way I have it. Yeah. And offensive tackle it's clear. We think it's a possibility because they invest in the trenches. Typically, they've invested earlier than they need to on the offensive line, but it really isn't a pressing need. You have Jordan Mailata at left tackle. You have Lane Johnson at right tackle. And I know Lane's going to be 35, but he really hasn't shown any signs of slowing down. Do you need a swing tackle maybe if Kendall Lamb isn't going to be the answer, or if you want like a long-term fill? I think a player here, you'd probably want some flexibility. Like he's the future right tackle, but in the interim, he can play some guard. To me, that's almost even more attractive than a plug and play guard.
Oh, no question about it. I totally agree. And that's why he'd be at the top of my list, because I just think it makes sense in so many ways. Have a guy compete for right guard and probably win right guard and learn from Lane. I mean, that's just so valuable. And, and if he ends up taking over for Lane at some point, great. If he doesn't, you got yourself a right guard. So and you need a guy who can be that backup swing guy. So he would help you in a lot of ways, and I just think it makes sense.
You've been on Josh Connerly from Oregon, and I am with you of the tackles in that area. I think he is like has a high upside. I think he does need some time to mature a little bit, but he'd be on my list. Josh Simmons from Ohio State, Calvin Banks from Texas. They might be gone by then. I think Simmons definitely would have been had he not gotten injured. I think there's a chance.
Yeah, I think there's a fair chance.
And then edge rusher at 2. I think when we started this process, I had edge rusher higher.
There's only one place it could be if it's higher.
Yeah, I would have had it 1, and I still think there's a really good chance they draft a defensive end edge rusher type with that 32nd pick. But I just pushed defensive tackle ahead of it. You lose Milton Williams, and it's just so important. There's such a premium on interior pass rush right now. It kind of like it's a little more new, right? Like edge rusher has always been the position, the flashy position on defense. You have to have. But defensive tackle is right there with it now.
So you have interior D-line second?
No, I have defensive tackle first.
Oh, first. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You said you had the same order as me.
That's the order you told me.
No, I said offensive tackle first, edge second, interior D-line third.
Oh, I thought you were counting down.
No, first I meant
because the whole thing we've been counting down here.
I know, but we're down to three areas. So anyway.
Now's a good time to just flip the whole format.
No, you asked me to count down my top 3, and I went 1, 2, 3.
That's counting up.
Yeah, but if you're giving all 3, there's no reason to have suspense and go 3, 2, 1 because we're not doing that. I'm giving all 3 at the same time. Anyway, this is not what people tune into here.
I'm going to die on this hill that we've been counting down the whole time. I thought you were still counting down. So you have defensive tackle at 3, edge rusher 2, offensive tackle at 1.
Correct.
So we do differ quite a bit.
Yes, we do.
And it took us 5 minutes to get here, but we do differ. Okay.
Yes, it did.
I want people to let me know what they think about.
Of course you do.
Yeah.
I don't care what people think. As long as they get the information, that's all I care about. And look, I think all 3, I think there's a clear gap between 3 and 4. I think these 3 are really likely compared to any other position. Look, with this team, if you guessed O-line or D-line every year since 1991, when they took Anton Davis, you would have been right 80% of the time. That's what they do. And even before Howie, that's what they've done. Tom Heckert did it. Tom Modrak did it. So I think, the exceptions are very few. 5 wide receivers, a couple quarterbacks, Donovan and Wentz, a couple corners, Lito and Q, but it doesn't happen often. So, but in any case, I think O-line number 1, and then edge, and then interior D-line.
Yeah, I do have offensive tackle 3rd just because the need isn't as pressing. I think there is like legit need to get a pass rusher in here. Like as well as they played in the Super Bowl, I think it's kind of making us forget that for a lot of last season, their pass rush was just okay.
Yeah.
Right? Like and after that you lose 2 of your key guys. You lose Sweat and you lose Milton Williams. I think there is like a real need to replenish. And they brought in Azeez Ojulari. I think he'll be good. They brought in Josh Uche. I don't know what he'll bring them. But either way, like that doesn't solve a long-term problem. And you lose Brandon Graham along the way too. So I think it's like a super important need to at least walk out of day 2 with an edge rusher or defensive tackle who's going to help you immediately.
No, I agree. That's why I have edge second. I mean, I think it's really important, and you can't count on Bryce Huff at all. I don't think. You don't think he'll even be here. I think he'll be here at least for the start of the season, but it's clearly something they have to address at some spot. Yeah.
In terms of names, edge rusher, Donovan Ezeraku, we've talked about, from Boston College. James Pierce from Tennessee. Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M. Nick Scourton from Texas A&M. There are some players available who might be in that range. Defensive tackle, I think he's probably the guy who's gotten mocked to them most. Walter Nolan from Ole Miss, just a really aggressive three technique. Derek Harmon from Oregon. TJ Sanders from Arkansas. So there are names there at both of those positions that kind of line up.
Yeah, and I think the depth at edge will push a good guy down into the second round. That's why I have him going tackle in the first and edge in the second. So we'll see. I think if Howie stays at 32 and 64, he's going to come out of those two picks with an edge and an offensive tackle.
How do you square that in your mind, though, with the offensive lineman in terms of like just the value that you get for a player who, if all goes well, might not play this year or might not play his natural position this year or 2 years?
Yeah.
Or 3 years.
Yeah. If he becomes a Pro Bowl guard, then you feel pretty good about it. So if you really believe in the player, then I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I think
you got to be really confident that he's going to be, that he can come in and he might not be NFL ready as a tackle, but that he can go out there and be a functional, above average right guard. You better believe that.
Yeah, and from my perspective, I think the tie would go to a defensive lineman. But if you're sitting there and that offensive tackle is like head and shoulders the better prospect, I think they would do it.
Yeah.
All right, you want to get to some questions? That was fun.
Yeah, let's do it. It was fun, except when you had no clue what I was talking about.
Well, that's a lot. That happens quite often here. If you have a question for us, it's Eagle-Eye at NBC Uni. That's NBCUNI.com. The QR code is on the screen. If you're watching on YouTube, you can scan that with your phone and send us a question that way. Let's get to a first one from Bill. I love the pod. Been listening since day one when Roob was just filling our minds with random stats. Since then, he blocked me on X for a Wentz post. We've been through a lot together. My question for you both is, if you had a chance to ask a player, coach, or front office person any question about any situation or decision, and in return, they would tell you the honest, unfiltered, off-the-record answer, who would you ask and what would you ask them about?
A coach or a front office? What do you say, coach or GM or just a coach?
Or a player, too.
Or player. I would ask Jalen Hurts what it was like to be Carson Wentz's teammate for a year.
Ooh, that's a really good one. Yeah, that's great. I love that because I feel like so many of these we've kind of eventually heard. Like, I feel like the Chip Kelly drama has really played itself out.
Yeah.
We've heard all about so much of it that I don't know how much is left to answer it. And then from the Carson Wentz perspective, like, I feel like we've kind of exhausted that too, but that's a different angle on it. That's fun.
Yeah.
And just the power to make Jalen answer a question honestly is fun.
Yeah.
I have a unique.
Another one might be, well, no, you go ahead. What's yours?
I was going to say, and this is one that's like very important to only me, but he was supposed to tell me, he never did. I want to know how Timmy Jernigan got hurt when he got all the guaranteed money taken out of his contract.
Yeah, that's a big mystery.
He was supposed to tell me when he retired, and I don't know if he ever actually retired.
Another one I just thought of was asking Sean Desai what it was like to watch the Matt Patricia defense.
Oh, that's good. You know, he had to feel some type of way about that and the way everything went down.
Yeah.
He handled it well publicly. I give him credit for that.
He sure did. We could get a whole podcast out of these.
Maybe that's a fun thing. We'll table this and we'll come back to this in one of those like June podcasts when I'm on a volcano or something.
Is that what you're doing this summer? You're going to a volcano?
Possibly. Yeah.
Like Mount Etna?
Not Mount Etna. But yeah, we'll get to that at some point.
Okay.
Next question is from Michael. And these next two questions run together. So I'll read Michael's and then I'll read Nick's. Hey, Dave and Roob, now that BG has retired and with the recent retirements of Jason Kelce, Fletcher Cox, and Nick Foles, what are your thoughts about the Eagles officially retiring numbers 55, 62, 91, and 9? I realize the NFL is reluctant to have teams retire numbers and that teams should retire numbers officially for all-time franchise greats, but these recent retirees are all-time great Eagles. Do you think the team retires the numbers officially or unofficially? What are your thoughts? And this one from Nick. I knew Roob will hate this offseason question. Why don't the Birds retire number 25? Tommy McDonald was a great receiver, NFL champion, and fun, everyday guy in the Hall of Fame. They have not given out the number since Shady, and I would not mind if McCoy even shared the retirement. Seems like it's way overdue. Thanks for having the most insightful and entertaining Eagles pod. So 2 questions about retiring numbers. In all, we're talking about retiring 5 different numbers in these 2 emails.
Yeah, it's funny. I think I've said this before. I don't think it happened last summer, but almost every summer, Shady texts me like the first few days of training camp. Anybody wearing 25? Yeah, you just can't wholesale retire a bunch of numbers. There just aren't that many numbers. And I think 61 is, out of all those numbers, but
for Wiz.
Yeah, for Wiz.
62 is Kelce.
Oh yeah. What did I say?
61 for you got a Stefan Wisniewski number.
Yeah, I think Kelce wore 61 his rookie year, didn't he? Training camp, but yeah, 62, 9. I just don't see the other numbers being retired. I mean, great players, but there's just not enough numbers.
Yeah, it is so weird to think about. Like this team also goes a little too far with it. Remember when they wouldn't give out 87 for a really long time? We all love Brent Selleck. Great Eagle.
Yeah.
You can't retire 87. Like you gotta throw it back in the mix a little sooner.
Yeah. I mean, there's some unofficially retired numbers. Is 12 isn't retired, right? But
no, I think 12 is retired.
Oh,
I'll look up the list here. I believe it is. But 25 obviously hasn't been worn. They were pretty quick to give away Malcolm's number, which I was surprised about.
Yeah. I mean, Quick's got to show up at training camp every year and see some undrafted rookie wearing 82.
Yeah, that's not a great one. How about 17? People have said for a long time, man, that was Harold's number. So here are the retired. No, yeah, 12 is not retired. It's just shadow retired. So it's 5, 15, 20, 40, 44, 60, 70, 92, and 99.
99 was retired when it wasn't supposed to be. Yeah, I think, gosh, was it Reggie when he was speaking and he said nobody will ever wear 99 again? And nobody, he just announced it and it was like, well, I guess we got to retire it. Jerome Brown's number, obviously, but that's a lot of numbers. But you look at the Yankees have 25 numbers retired.
Yeah, the 62 is going to be tough to put in rotation again.
Yeah, I think that's the one. With all due respect to BG and Fletch and Nick Foles, Shady, that's Kelsey's number is the only one I could see really being retired.
I like the idea, and we've talked about this before, but I kind of love what the Cowboys do with 88. You just give it to your best receiver. I think that should be the next trend of dealing with jersey numbers instead of retiring it. Not that they would do this, but 62 is your glue guy offensive lineman, or you know what I mean? Something like that, because otherwise you can't keep retiring all these numbers.
Yeah, they do that in college a lot. Right. The top D-back will have a certain number at some schools, and
71 is kind of sneakily retired now too.
Yeah. Yeah. Running out of numbers. They have to go 3 digits or fractions or something.
Well, the Eagles were the team that proposed getting 0 added. They needed the extra number.
I mean, do you think at some point they'll have like he's number 68.52,
No.
decimals? You don't think that'll happen?
I don't think so.
I mean, in 100 years, there's gonna be no numbers left.
Well, that's why you just got to take him out of retirement.
Yeah, that's the last resort, taking a number out of retirement.
Yeah, but like,
how do you unretire a number? Has that happened?
Well, Michael Jordan got the 23 down for himself.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, that's a little iffy. All of a sudden you have some Eagles undrafted, some 7th round pick out there wearing 60. I don't know if that's going to work.
It might not. Next one from John. Hey, gents, love the pod and listen to everyone from my Baltimore home base where we have a lot of Eagles fans. Walk down the street for 15 minutes and I guarantee you'll say go Birds at least once. I'm surprised by how much credence you're giving to the idea of picking Lane's replacement in a high round in this year's draft. I get the idea of insurance, but isn't that what Kendall Lamb is for? What are the odds that Lane would drop off or get injured any more than last year when it looked like he was still in his prime? The team's clear priorities are edge and D tackle. As much as I love Moro Ujima, going further, I'd argue that they need to grab their heir apparent for Goddard faster than the next Lane. But here's my question. With the loss of BG and Sweat and the questions surrounding Bryce Huff, would you be surprised if they spent their first 2 picks on edges? The high round double down on one position wouldn't be unprecedented. Look no further than last year. I personally love the idea if the board dictates it.
Yeah, it certainly worked last year with corners. I think it's unlikely. But yeah, I think if the board goes that way, which it probably won't, I don't think it would shock anybody, but I mean, one of those two, I think, is going to be an edge.
Yeah, it's possible. I don't think they would go into a draft thinking like we're going to try to double down at this position. They didn't think that last year. They did it because Cooper DeJean was a guy they thought they might get at 22, and then when he was there at 40, yeah, let's go get this guy. And the nice thing there is that those guys don't really play the same position. They kind of do, but they really don't. So
I guess if you take 2 edges, you'd want one to be, maybe a bigger guy who can play first down and stop the run, maybe not be a huge sack number guy. And you'd want the other guy to be, just like a 250-pound, 245-pound, just pure edge rusher who's out there on third downs. You'd want a different kind of guy.
Yeah, I think you could make that work, right? And I think there is something to that idea of having different body types, different play styles at that position. They had that last year. It's funny because Sweaty came in the league as like kind of a specialist, right? But he was big and strong and played well at the point of attack, and he became like a really kind of like Vinny Curry, actually. Like, remember the early part of Vinny's career where he was kind of a pass rush specialist, and then by the end of his career, he was out there on early downs.
Yeah, that's true, but not on pass rush downs.
Exactly.
That's the difference. Sweat was still out there on pass rush downs.
That's true. All right, good questions today. Eagle at NBCUni.com if you have one for us. This is where I remind everyone, if you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast, please do us a favor, rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, please click the like button and subscribe there as well. Roob, any final thoughts today?
I was just wondering if you unpacked yet.
Yeah, this won't surprise you. I unpack pretty quick.
You got a little like Tony Randall in you, don't you? What
does that mean?
Odd Couple, that's before your time, I guess.
Yeah.
TV show, Jack Klugman, Tony Randall, they were like roommates. Jack Klugman was actually the sports writer. Tony Randall might have been like an opera critic or something. But yeah, he was guaranteed that, if he came back on a trip, he'd be unpacked within the first 15 minutes. I think you're probably the same way.
You know what I've started doing?
Whereas me, I haven't unpacked from the Super Bowl yet.
You know what? This is embarrassing. What I've started doing, if I'm in a hotel room for more than 2 nights, I unpack.
Do you really?
I move into that hotel room.
Like the dresser?
I'm putting stuff in the dresser. I'm hanging shirts up. I'm emptying the suitcase completely.
What is wrong with you?
Because then it makes it easier to repack when I'm done.
If you never unpack, it's easy to You don't have to repack.
No, then you're rooting around for stuff and everything becomes wrinkled. And
I mean, if I have like a blazer and a dress shirt, I'll hang those up. Not gonna, but yeah, that's about it. Nothing else is coming out of the bag.
yeah, I'm taking it all out now.
Yeah, we're very different. In case people haven't noticed,
A bit of an odd couple ourselves. That's all for Eagle Eye Podcast. We're presented by Nissan. For Reuben Frank, I'm Dave Zangaro. Enjoy the rest of your week. We'll talk to you soon.